Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is part 3 of Mastering Your CMA. Now, in this particular session, it is a shorter session. Why? Because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go through the CMA report. Now, this is a generic report that you will be able to download in the downloadable section, and you can use this when you're actually having those discussions with your clients. Now, the reason for this particular session is to make sure that you understand all of the various components. When you just get a downloadable or a report right off the gun, you might have a little bit of ambiguity. So this particular session is to make sure that there is zero ambiguity and that you understand how to go through it. And in fact, it's very customizable. If you want to change the colors, if you want to change logos, you can actually do it on this particular report. So let's get into today and go through that. Now, with all my sessions, I always start out with this particular slide. You should know it by now. It's how to get the most out of these particular sessions. So it starts with the acronym, the PCC. The P is participation, and participation is making sure that you can focus in these particular sessions. Now, you'll notice that my sessions are always short and sweet and to the point. I don't want them to go on and on that then gets you to be distracted just because you're feeling tired. So your participation is absolutely paramount so that you get the maximum engagement. The second, the C, is for curiosity. You see, when you've got questions, ask those particular questions. You don't know what you don't know. So sometimes just asking that question will actually help yourself and help the others on these particular calls. And lastly is your commitment. Commitment into using the golden nuggets that I share with you. You see, each one of these particular sessions that I do, I always have that large golden nugget. And it's that golden nugget that you will be able to work with for the next week ahead, getting into it, unraveling it, and putting it into action. So the PCC is how you get the most out of all of the sessions, and especially for today. Now, as I mentioned, today's session is all about that CMA report. And there are some key components when you are building a professional CMA template. Now, the beauty behind this, as I mentioned, you will be able to go into the download section and download the template that I'm going to give you an overview through. So what are the main components? Well, there's three main components to a great CMA. The first component is the design and layout. I've seen CMAs that are 14 pages long. I've seen CMAs that's literally just a print straight from Lightstone. And what I like to do is I like to have that custom element to it. So your design and layout needs to be neat. It needs to be clean. It needs to be something that when you're having the discussion with your clients, everything is on one page. So it's easy to have those conversations. So design and layout is absolutely important when you're going forward. The second is branding in your contact details. There's so many times that I've seen reports that get left on desks when I'm doing appointments thereafter, and it doesn't even have an agent's name on it. It doesn't even have branding on it. So make sure that it has one branding, which this one does, and you can change if you're running powered by, as well as your contact details. It's so important because it does become part of an extended business card. So make sure that you've got it, and this particular one that I share, it has all of that. And the last element, it needs to be easy to prepare. You see, you don't want to be sitting down for hours and hours and hours to prepare a CMA report, and then it takes you 5 minutes to present. Those time that you spent in preparing it, you could be using it in other areas of your business. So it needs to be concise. It needs to be so to the point that it will take you less than 5 minutes to put together. And that's exactly what I've done in this particular report that I'm going to share with you. It is simple. The layout is easy. It's appealing to the eye so that you can see the flow and the progress through it. And that layout just really has it where you can look professional. And this is ultimately what we're wanting to do, is we want in that professional nature that we can present through to our clients. So what does that actual report look like? Well, this is the quick overview of the report. This is a template and an example from top all the way down to the bottom. Now, I'm going to break this down into different sections for you. First, I'm going to show you the owner's property. This is so important because whenever you're doing something, this is a comparable, you're going to be comparing what is sold, what is on the market to their property. So you'll see that all the columns line up, and when you start comparing, you'll actually notice there are certain key components to it. So the first at the top has the owner's details. The second are properties that have been sold already. And the third element is what's on the market. Now, right down the bottom, this is where we start to put it all together to give your clients a variable. And in this particular template, I have already put in certain factors to give you that variance, but I'll explain how that actually works. And this is going to be putting that all together. So let's start out with the very first section. So a little bit of magic from my part, and what I do is I zoom straight into it. How cool is that for animation? You must admit that takes it to a whole new level. You can see my excitement when I actually found out how to do that. So we look at the very first section of the CMA report, and this is the owner's details, the owner's property. Now, where do we get this particular information from? Well, we actually get it from the seller themselves. We can't assume that it's a 3-bedroom house. We can't assume that it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, or however many garages. What we've done on this particular report is we've picked up certain key elements. So what are those certain key elements? And remember, we want to compare apples with apples. Well, the first you'll see is the address. You know the address. Why? Well, your client's going to tell it to you anyway. Make sure that you put it inside the actual report, because the first part you look at is, are we talking about the right property? Because they may have 6 or 7 properties, and you might have pulled some CMA report which is reflecting the wrong property. So this is where it really starts. Next up is under roof. Now, this is absolutely key. When we're working with properties, we work with under roof square meterages. In the sectional titles, it's very straightforward. It's given to you on a Lightstone report. However, for freehold properties, a Lightstone report only gives you the urban size. So that includes the grass and everything around. What we're looking for is the under roof. If you had to get the plans for the building to work out that outer perimeter, what is that square meterage under roof? Now, you can find that bit of information by going through. Lightstone does have a built-in tool that you can actually measure and give you under roof. You just need to make sure the house is not single story or double story. So that we will get into in a future session. The next is your bedrooms. You need to work out how many bedrooms, and it's a simple question. So when you're setting up that appointment, ask them, how many bedrooms have you got? The next is, how many bathrooms have you got? And if it's a half bathroom, so the guest loos, you can put in there a 2.5 if you want. The 0.5 will reflect that guest bathroom. And just as a side note, if they've got 2 guest bathrooms, it doesn't equal 1. It will still remain as a 0.5. It just indicates that it's a guest bathroom. Garages and carports. Now, we put them into the same category. What we're looking for is how many vehicles can we park on the property under cover. So that's what that particular column is all about. How many cars can we park on the property under cover? So they may have 2 garages, 1 carport. That response will be 3. So it's the number of cars or vehicles that can be parked under cover on that particular property. So that's with the actual garage. When it comes to pool, the pool is something that adds a certain element of value to the property. It's not a huge value. It has a value which is an appealing value to buyers. So it's a yes, no type of answer. We do find a lot of our sellers take a lot of pride around their pool, making sure the entertainment area is good, making sure the grass is always green, and making sure the pool is always blue. So we add that in so that we can compare. A flatlet, now we put this into a general term. A flatlet is a place where someone can be self-sufficient in living. Now, we're not talking about a domestic room. We're talking about it must have a bathroom, a kitchen area, a bedroom area, a lounge area, something that is self-sufficient for somebody to live in. Whether it's a granny flat, whether it's a little bachelor pad, it must be self-sufficient and not have to have any of the amenities of the main house used. Why? Because that, in fact, is a cover-up for us to identify additional income for that particular property. So those are the different areas that we actually look at when we're comparing apples for apples. And I just wanted to give you that breakdown. In the notes section, if there's anything that stands out that you just need to make an aware of, for instance, modern finishes, maybe they overlook the ocean, something of that nature. It's a feature that will stand out in the actual property. Why? Because when you're comparing other properties, we want to compare apples for apples, and they can say, but that one doesn't have views of the ocean. And that will just be your reminder to look for properties that actually will match. So the owner's properties, as we said, you'll get the information from the seller as well as from a property inspection if you've been through the property, but you need to get as much information as detailed into that particular section. Now we go on to the second part. And the second part, I just love this way it rolls up. Sorry, this animation for me took me like, wow. So anyway, we're looking at the properties sold. And really what we're looking for are 5 properties that match, that have been sold. So where do we get this information from? Well, you'll see down the bottom, Lightstone is the easiest source to get it. They get the information from the deeds office. Now, typically we want to find properties, and I always use this as a reference, that is within a 5 to 10 minute walk from that house. That is the radius that we're looking at. So 5 to 10 minutes will take you probably about 3 kilometers in that circumference area. Those are the properties that you're wanting to actually have a look at. Now, when we start looking at these properties, we list them. On the left-hand side, you've got number 1 property sold. Put the address of that property. You will get that straight from Lightstone. You insert all of those. Then we're looking at under roof. Now, as I mentioned, if it's sectional title, you can just pull that information straight from Lightstone. If it is a freehold, you will need to work out that circumference or the perimeter of the house to calculate the under roof. And that's a very simple feature, both on Lightstone and on Google. On the measurements, you can actually work that out. But it's very important because I'm going to explain that once I've gone through all of this. Then you're going to start seeing the common elements. Number 1, number of bedrooms. Well, this is where if it has already been sold, you can actually look back. Maybe it's a property that you have sold, so you've got the details already, or maybe it's still listed on the internet under one of the portals and it says sold, so you can get that information. But you need to make sure that you're well aware of it. The second, number of bathrooms, garages, carports, pool, flatlet. You'll see that those are exactly the same as the actual owner's property. This is where we're comparing apples for apples. Now, the next column, time on market. And this, the only way that you're going to get this information, and this will actually decipher the difference between an agent that's just randomly putting together or an agent that knows the market. You see, whenever a property lands on the market, what I did personally, I created my own spreadsheet. Every single property that came on the market, I put it on that spreadsheet with the date that it was listed. Now, you can get that information straight from the portals. They actually do have the listing date. I would have it there. I would put down the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the garages. If it had a pool, if it's got a flatlet, I had all that information on a spreadsheet and have it as separate. As soon as I saw a property was sold and I started pulling up these reports, I could cross-reference those particular properties, and then I would say, hey, but this property was registered on this date, and I could actually calculate how many months did it take to actually sell. Now, if you're active in your particular suburb, you'll start seeing this on an ongoing basis. Now, if you're working in an area of 1,000 properties, on average, you're going to get about 5%, which is a good area. About 40, 50 properties will start to rotate over a year. So it's not a huge report. It's something that you can keep on an ongoing basis. And on the right-hand side, information straight from Lightstone is what was it registered for? What was that closing price on it? And there we put down the prices. Now, it's clean, it's neat. Your seller can actually look at it and go, oh, I recognize that property. Oh, was it a 3-bedroom? Was it? And we can start having a look at all of that. Now, I'm going to go back to that very first column, which is the under roof square meterage. And what you're going to find is when I go down, there's an average at the bottom. Why is that average so important? Because this is part of how we calculate our CMA values. Is we want to work out what is the average square meterage, the Rand value per square meterage. So what do? On that average column at the bottom, we've got under roof, and you'll see down the bottom it says 282. So that's 282 square meters. That is the average of those 5 properties. On the far right-hand side, it has all the prices, and it has an average of 2.82 million Rand. That's the average price. So now we know what that average is of the properties that have sold. Now we take 2.8 million, we divide that by 282, and what does that give us in the middle? It gives us 10,000 Rand per square meter. Now, you're going to see how all of these numbers start to add up, because if you remember on the very first slide with the owner's detail, we had calculated what is that under roof square meterage. Now, if we've calculated the average, we can actually now in our head, we can calculate, well, if there are 280 square meters under roof and the average in the area is 10,000, I just multiply the two together. I know that around about 2.8 million, this is really where the valuation is coming in. If the house is 300 square meters, well, 300 times 10,000 is 3 million. So you can see where we're actually sitting in that particular alignment. So this one is all the properties that are sold, all to get that little figure of what is it under roof. What is that Rand value per square meter under roof? So now that we've got our properties that are sold, now what we're going to look at, well, it's pretty obvious. I just love the way this animation goes for me. We start looking at the properties that are currently on the market. Now, here it's quite straightforward and simple. You can jump onto the portals, you can punch in your suburb, and you can then start to look at, hey, we want to look at 3 bedrooms. And typically what I would do is if I come up and I search a particular suburb and it comes up with 400 properties on the market, what I would do is then take that search criteria and make it almost matching on the owner's property. So their property is X amount of bedrooms, X amount of bathrooms, so that I start getting that report smaller and smaller and smaller, so that I can start comparing apples with apples. Then I will extract that information. Again, we put in that address. If you can find the address on the portals, alternatively, you can put a reference number on there and say, hey, P24 reference number, this is this particular property. But if you are very familiar with your properties in your suburb, you should know what that address is. Every Wednesday, I would walk the neighborhoods and I would recognize properties from the outside. I would see a for sale board outside that property as well. And when I saw it on the internet, I knew exactly what property it was. So you should be able to find the addresses. From those addresses, get that under roof square meterage if it's not already uploaded from the previous agent that has listed that property or currently listed. Then the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the garages, the pool, and the flatlet, exactly the same. Does it have all those features and benefits so that we can start doing those comparisons? Now we add on this particular comment, which is time on market. So the great thing, you can go into the portal, you can see, hey, it is listed in the month of October, which means it's currently on the market. It's in its first month. Bam, I put 1 month on the market. And slowly I start putting them down. Now, right-hand column, we've got those prices. Now, this is where a discussion really helps. But I want more for my property. That guy's got it on the market for 3.8 million. Well, yes, Mr. Seller, as you can see, it is on the market for 3.8 million. Yes, it does match everything that you got, but it's been on the market for 4 months already. And what you're going to find is going to be properties on for 8, 9, 10 months. You put that there, and it's your quick cross reference to start persuading your clients that if you list at a higher price, and the script is very easy, are you prepared to wait 10 months? Are you prepared to wait as per whatever's in that line there? So that's why it's clean and smooth to allow you to go through that. Then the two features right down the bottom is that average, the average under roof square meterage, and on the right hand side, the average price of all the properties that are currently on. And now we're looking at what is, for properties that are currently on the market, what is the average price per square meter? Now, when a client comes to you, and this is a side note for you to help, if a client comes through to you and says, okay, so my property is 300 square meters under roof, and I want to list it for 4 million rand. Well, here's a little easy script on that. Well, if your house is 300 square meters under roof, we multiply that by that 11,732 rand, 23 rand, that comes in at roughly 3.3 million. Now, Mr. Seller, if we take those averages of the property on the market, your property would fit around about 3.3 million. If you're pricing it at 4 million, you're overpriced. And we can clearly see that by the properties that are currently listed on the market. So this section allows you to have a quick reference to see what is it that they're wanting, and you can see that they are now above or below what's currently on the market. So it's a very, very quick reference guide just to get that in your price counseling. So you can see how this particular template, each part of it helps you to break down and have a conversation with your clients. And then right at the end, once we've gone through all of this, we actually break it down to the final part, which is those comparables. Now, I've built in certain percentages that are into here, and they work calculating as per the under roof square meterage. So this particular document is open. You can see the formula that I use. I'm not going to go into details of that formula. Why? Because there are times in different suburbs where properties are actually with the trend is going up. So we need to amend that variance. There are some areas where the trends are going down. So we need to amend those particular variances. What I've done is taken an average to calculate it. So, Mr. Seller, with your particular property, compared with what is sold and what is currently on the market, your comparable market price is between 2.5 million and 3.1 million. And this is that variance that's going in. In a future session, I'm going to share with you how we start pushing closer to the higher amount and how we start pushing closer to the lower amounts, so that you know where you're going to price it. Because straight out of the gun, your seller's going to say, I want to list at 3.1 million. However, it needs major renovation work. So this gives you that variance based on the type and the quality of the property. And that is easy because when you're having your conversation with your clients, you will be able to break that down to say, well, you're actually sitting into this category, which means we're going to be average to the bottom half. And we will discuss that in a future session. And there at the bottom of the actual report, you can actually see where you have the agent's name. You've actually got your mobile number. You've got your email address. You've got everything that's needed as a business card. So from a logo up the top, your seller's details, their property. You're actually breaking down to properties that have sold, properties that are currently on the market, and giving that little closure to help you in your particular conversation. So that is my little template that I share with you. It is a very straightforward template that you can use any time when you're doing your CMA. There it is, all put together, which allows you to create this template that is easy to work with. It's got a nice clean layout. Again, you can change any of the colors and logos. It is a totally flexible. It's an Excel document that you can download and that you would be able to work with any one of your clients to make it easy in your reports.